We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vellet. All right, BraveCo men, welcome back to the BraveCo podcast. This week's guest is a good friend of mine, Bryant, Ellis. Bryant, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And just to introduce you really quick, and you can like fill in the gaps.
Okay.
But you are the founder and creator of the Adventure Challenge. And then I think you got, was it Forbes 30 under 30?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For like businessmen of the year. Is that what
so
it is?
Yeah, every year Forbes does like the 30 under 30 list, and in my category, I was one of the 30.
Gosh, dude, that's such a big accomplishment.
Thanks. Yeah, it was super fun to win that award. Like I've never really seen awards as a business or an entrepreneur that you're like, oh, I want to win that.
Yeah.
And then when somebody said, hey, dude, you're eligible for the Forbes 30 under 30, and I was 28 at the time.
Yeah.
And they were like, you kind of your company has beat all of these other companies. You could probably win this. And when I got that in my head, I was like, oh God, please, I would love to win this. And so it was really cool to actually win it. I never would have thought that'd be an award that I'd want to go after or anything, but it was cool. I was excited when I got it. Yeah, man,
that's so cool. Well, I'm really excited for this podcast, a lot because of what you've been through, overcome, but also you just released a book or about to release a book. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk a decent amount about that, but take me back a little bit to your childhood growing up. And I think even just starting the Adventure Challenge, your book is called Hello, My Name is Failure. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to dive into a bunch of how to fail successfully, how to look at failure, all that good stuff. But take me back and where did you learn about, where were you introduced to failure in your childhood? What did that look like?
Yeah, well, I think my relationship with failure early on, I didn't know I had a healthy relationship with it because our dad kind of presented it in a way that was very positive.
Wow.
And it necessarily wasn't failure, it was just practice, and it was like, to get good at something, you have to find out where you're not good and perfect those things, and you just gradually get better over time. And so as a little kid, I just had this theory in my head, if I can do something 100 times, I'll figure it out. And so I remember one of my childhood best friends, his dad could juggle, and I would watch him as a little kid. I was like 10, 11 years old. And I was like, man, if I could practice juggling for maybe not 100 times, but if I could lock myself in a room for a couple hours, I could figure out juggling and just stumble through the process of it. So I asked him, how do you juggle? And he's like, you take 2 balls and you just throw 2 like that. And then eventually your hands get the feel of it. And then you're able to do 3. Lock myself in a room, and 2 to 3 hours later, I could juggle.
Wow.
And that's something that I was like, oh, that's cool. And then when I was a basketball player, you'd see the cool players spinning the ball on their finger.
Yeah.
If I can lock myself in a room, I bet I could do that. Same thing. Could spin the ball on my finger after a couple hours. Same with making a left-handed layup. It was weird. You have to have, it's this motion.
It's so weird.
Versus this.
Yeah. I never feel more girly.
Or uncoordinated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like throw a rock with your left hand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gosh, man.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And that I applied the same theory. I was like, I'm going to do 100 left-handed layups. And by like 50 or 60, it was comfortable. So like left-handed layups became just as natural as my right hand. And in anything I'm doing in life, mostly with hobbies, I have that theory. If I can do this 100 times, I'm going to learn it. I might not perfect it or master it. What's it, like 50,000 hours to master 10,000 hours?
I think it's like 10,000 hours, yeah.
Yeah, so
Malcolm Gladwell.
But to start something and to feel proficient, I think for people who want to do public speaking, they get discouraged after 1 or 2 things where they feel nervous, they stumbled over their words, they didn't do a good job, or they want to start a podcast. They release 5 episodes and then quit because they don't see the traction. They want to be an influencer. They release 4 videos, it gets 5 likes. Have you tried releasing 100? So back to my childhood, I always felt that if I want to do something and I want to get good at it, I just need to do it 100 times. And each one of those times you're embracing failure because you're hitting the level of where your body, your muscle memory, your brain doesn't understand what you're doing, but you just keep pushing past that a little bit. And so you take it to a more practical thing like business. And I wouldn't say you have to start 100 businesses for them to fail, but you have to understand that it's an educational journey. And the first business you create, you might not like to think this way because it's not fun or sexy to think this way, but it's like this venture might just be education for the venture that actually works. So, as a kid, I had a lawn mowing company business, where I'd cut grass and I hired my friends. I'd get the person I'd charge them $50 to cut the grass. And then I'd hire my friend for $30 to cut the grass.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah. And I didn't know I didn't understand that's kind of capitalism. Like you find the person and then you delegate. I didn't understand what that was. I thought I was being dishonest, not dishonest, but I thought it was bad. And they thought it was bad because I would get all of these clients and then be like, hey, I'll pay you $30 to cut the grass. And they're like, yeah, that's great. And then one friend found out that I was making money off of them making money. And they all rose up against me and quit. And I felt so bad because I was like, and now as an adult, I'm like, no, you actually went out and made the sales pitch, got the client, did all of the work, bought the gear, filled it up with gas, gave them a job, and you're paying them $30 an hour to cut something. And of course, you're going to get kickback. But as a young kid, I didn't understand that. And so, it was
felt disloyal as a kid.
It did. Yeah. And so, but that was my first business. And growing up, we did a lot of fundraisers. My dad was a youth pastor before he became pastor. And we did door-to-door sales. Door-to-door sales as an entrepreneur is like, you should be doing that. You should have some experience with cold calls or something like that. And it was the same metric of 100. If I go visit 100 doors, how many of them are going to say yes? So the no's aren't bad. That's just getting me closer to the yes that I need. And so I didn't see it as, you want to buy this necklace? No, I failed. It was like, cool, next. You move on to the next one. And I think as a young kid, it developed this healthy perspective within entrepreneurship of failing and excelling, because it was like your no's are just getting you closer to your yes, versus the no's aren't evidence that you're not going to get a yes. And that's what a lot of people kind of assume, is that rejection means I'm never going to be good enough. I can't obtain this. Rejection is maybe you didn't hit the mark yet, or maybe you still have a learning curve you need to go through, or education you need to experience. And so, I grew up a pastor's kid, Oklahoma. My dad was very big on working for yourself and, finding ways to make money that are out of the box and different and unique, never illegal. But that's kind of just how I was raised. And so I think it developed a really healthy perspective of kind of how to embrace the messiness of not getting what you want immediately.
I think what an incredible way to grow up, right? Where you have the most important person in your life who is modeling for you and even cheering you on, like, be creative, learn how to embrace failure. Mm-hmm. Like, failure's not final. All the things that are trendy to say today, like, that you grew up like that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. I think when we talk about failure, like, I talk a lot about working through pain, just because of my background, going through divorce and working through nervous breakdowns and all that stuff. And it's easy for me to talk about working through pain. It's hard when I'm in a new season where I'm having to work through pain, right? Because I'm like, I'm back in the thing that I talk about a lot, and I should be good at this.
Yeah,
I know all the things to do. Failure is a lot like that for me.
Okay, yeah.
In the sense that I think when I'm just like trying to be so honest, like when I'm doing something, and I'll give you an example, like building BraveCo, for instance. There's no clear pathway to this is how to do it.
100%.
Which is the hard part.
Yeah.
Because if someone just said, hey, it's going to take 20 years, but here's exactly how you do it, then it's like, okay, I'm just going to grind away at that. But there's no clear path. But also my brain says there should be a path. Like, I should know the right way to do it. Or maybe I shouldn't know, like, there's not a shame piece to it, but like I could possibly know the right way to do it.
Yeah.
When really, like, there is no real perfect way to do it. Then when you put yourself out there, right, and you start to think through, like, maybe it's a marketing plan strategy that we put together and it doesn't go very well, it just reinforces this thing inside of you that says, I don't actually know what I'm doing.
Totally, yeah.
And when I'm faced with, I think when humans are faced with this thing that says you don't actually know what you're doing and you're not doing a good job at it,
Yeah.
the next thing is I want to quit.
Yeah.
Right? Like at least that's how I feel naturally.
Yeah.
Like if I'm being so honest, it's like I think I'm going to be good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I try to do it. I'm not good at it. Reinforces that I'm not good at it because I don't see the results that I want to. My next feeling is I don't actually want to do this, because who wants to do stuff that you're not good at?
Totally. Yeah.
Like not me.
Yeah.
What's your message for that? Like what's your process for dealing with failure in a way that keeps you in the game and gets you like through those real life hard moments? I mean, you've built businesses, so this is clearly something that you've been through.
I think, well, there's a few things you said that I want to touch on.
Yeah.
One of them is like, I discourage most people from being an entrepreneur, because being an entrepreneur is just learning how to problem solve.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like nobody gives you a roadmap. I mean, they're like, right, you can learn a lot, but it's not like other careers where there is like, you do these things to achieve this and you do this to achieve this. It's like if you're creating a brand new product and you're trying to figure out how to market it, if it doesn't exist, you're having to kind of reinvent a little bit the wheel of how you market that, or the creativity behind.
It's such a good point.
It. Yeah.
Because like, and not to cut you off, but it's true. Like if I'm going to start a tent company and start making tents, like there's a way to make tents. I can look and see how to make tents. Yeah. Or if I'm in the military and I'm an engineer in the military, like there's an actual pathway to becoming an engineer and engineering bridges and engineering houses. And like people have already figured out that recipe. And so it's so much easier. Like it's so much easier to be a chef in a chain restaurant where you've been given the recipes, but an entrepreneur, for the most part, like that's not the life that you live.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really weird because the only way to succeed is through trial and error. I see a lot of people get stuck. I do a lot of like coaching through entrepreneurs, and you know, a common thing I get is I don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, something, anything, honestly, doing anything is better than doing nothing. And what you're going to do, if you have an idea, like I'm going to try this, do it, let it not work so you can put that in the list of things that do not work. Kind of like Thomas Edison. I didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned 1,000 things that don't work. Like that little piece that was supposed to go in the light bulb. He tried thousands and thousands of things and finally one to work. And they're like, well, you failed something. I didn't fail. I was educating myself. This blade of grass isn't going to work. This piece of hay, I don't know what he used. This needle's not going to work. And he slowly learned what did work. And so it really is a giant experiment of learning what does and doesn't. And I think what people get caught up on is they attach their identity to the misstep. So, you know, you show up to bat in the game of life, you swing and miss, and you think, I'm never going to be good enough. This shows me what kind of man I am. This shows me I'm not successful. Versus, why did you miss? Maybe you need more reps. Maybe you need to hold the bat differently. Maybe your stance is wrong. Maybe your eyes aren't on the ball. There's so many things you could learn from why didn't this work. I see this in marketing because like I think where my skill set comes in is I feel like I can market anything.
Oh, wow.
If you give me something, I know how to make a commercial or an ad to sell that thing. If it's a good item, if it's something that I like. And so, and to do that, it takes a lot of trial and error. When we're making ads for my company, The Adventure Challenge, we do something called A/B testing, which is when we take an ad and then we create 5, 10, 15, 20 different intro hooks to test to see if the market responds to it. And every time a video doesn't work, I'm not like, wow, I'm a horrible video creator. I'm a horrible marketer. It was like, the market didn't respond to this. Let's see if they respond to this video instead.
Actually like, you do like a small test for it, right? Like, exactly. Is that what you're saying? So like you pay in like paid ads a certain amount of money and then see what people really gravitate towards.
Exactly. You spend like $50 on this ad, $50 on this. Which one gets the most likes, clicks, and buys? And
then put a bunch of money behind it.
As soon as an ad goes, okay, now this is giving you 2 times your money back or 3 times your money back, then we flood it. And then we put thousands of dollars into it. And so, but it's that experimental process. It's like, I have an idea or a hunch of what might work, but the market will let me know if this is accurate. And if I'm just like being a perfectionist and I don't want to release something that doesn't work, you're not going to learn what doesn't work, which will lead you to what does work.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I feel like the faster people can be okay with understanding that part of me growing is embracing becoming a failure for a season. And I say the word failure, not like you're a failure, but it's embracing looking ignorant, appearing uneducated, seeming weak. And as men, we don't like that. We like to know all the answers. We like to act like we have all of our stuff together. We like to portray this image. People fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
No, that like faking it till you make it, you're not going to win. Like, be okay with being like, I am very like one thing when I first started, I don't want to burn this table. When I first started Adventure Challenge turned into a bigger company than my education understood. Meaning like I didn't have the education or the knowledge to run at the time a $1 million company. So I'm sitting in these meetings with, a financial advisor or a potential investor. I remember when I first created the prototypes for the books and I was pitching it to investors before I made $1. And he goes, well, what are your profit margins going to be? And I literally said, what are profit margins?
Bro, I know.
Yeah.
I know how you feel.
Yeah. And it was so, and
it's humiliating.
He didn't invest because I asked that. And I said, but I was like, I would rather sound ignorant so you educate me quickly so then I don't have that area of lack anymore. And in business meetings all the time, and I will to this day do this. If we're sitting down and there is like we're meeting with Walmart or Target and they use an acronym or something that I don't know, instead of being like, well, I should know what that acronym is, they're going to think I'm an ignorant, at the time, 25, 26-year-old kid who shouldn't have this business. I go, oh, what does that mean? Oh, what is, and they're like, oh, it means this and this. And I've had so many people go, I'm so glad you asked that. I didn't know what that meant either.
Yeah. Nobody in the room knows what it means. Yeah.
And I'm like, it's okay to sound a little ignorant. Like not having to act like you have it all together. That's like, I feel like one of the biggest lies that keeps people from progressing is faking it till you make it, act like you have all the answers, portray yourself as this expert. It's like, no, like there's a time to hold your cards and be silent, but the more vulnerable and open you're able to be about your shortcomings, the faster you're going to be able to cover those educational gaps.
Let's talk through that really quick. And we had lunch earlier. And so we didn't talk through this, but we talked about human instinct and survival. And part of why we don't like to ask those kinds of questions is like two things in my mind is it makes us feel insecure, right? And then also makes me look weak. And our number one instinct is our instinct to survive. Like, it's the thing that got us here for so long, right? Because the human species on its own is the least likely to survive on its own when you're born, right? So like when a baby's born, I mean, it takes at least 9 months for you to walk. So you're like super vulnerable. And that instinct to survive is like, we are innately aware that on our own, I'm pretty vulnerable. But inside of the community and company. And so like, I really want people's approval. I really want your value, you to value me. And I don't want to look incompetent because as soon as I look incompetent, I actually also don't look very valuable to people, right? Because instinctually, if somebody can do something, they feel valuable to us. If somebody has a lot of resources financially or physically, they feel it's like naturally somebody that you want in your life because you go, oh, that helps me survive. I'm just talking about like the primitive man. And so anytime we start going down the road of like, I don't know what that acronym means. I don't actually know how to complete this task that I've been given. I don't feel competent or confident in this area. Like we don't think about it a lot. But it's not even just like it's pushing on a very primitive piece of us as human beings to like, it feels like we're about to get kicked out of the tribe.
Yeah.
And in some way you have to, overcome that instinct that's coming and saying like, don't look weak I think you have to have some role models or something in you that says, actually, the strongest guy in the room is the guy that can admit his weakness, own it, do something about it, and move forward, right? Like because when I think about how have, in the areas that I have succeeded and really worked through insecurity, not in every area of my life, but in the areas that I have, it's been because somebody in my life had showed me how actually being honest and vulnerable in this area makes me stronger.
Yeah.
it's accomplishing the thing that I ultimately want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that's a hard step to get over, because it's like, it's on the same level as a UFC fighter who has to get in the ring knowing he's going to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
Cause all your instincts say, don't put yourself in a place where you're going to get hit in the face.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
like I work really hard
Yeah.
to not get hit and to not get hurt.
Yeah.
But you can't be a fighter and not get hit. You have to know how to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you hit more than you get hit.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you can't be a successful human being unless you're willing to fail, right? Like, it's impossible. We know this logically, but like instinctually, it just feels like I'm having to overcome my primitive man so much, because failure innately looks like something I want to kick out of my life.
Yeah.
And I have to overcome that. I don't even know if I have a question. I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, I feel like to really get good at this, you're overcoming so much of just this very instinctual, like, God, I don't want to fail.
Yeah.
I don't want to look dumb.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel weak. I want people to value me, and I want to respect me, and I'm not doing something well. That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes from the fear of, it's the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a part where it's like, this is going to sound so cliche, I'm so sorry in advance, but if you can't accept yourself, like, you can't expect other people to accept you. And the more grace that you have for yourself and other people, the more that will be extended to you. And so take an open mic, comedian, open mic.
Yeah.
My brother's a stand-up comedian, so he does a lot of these. When a comedian goes up and totally bombs, just sucks, no one's laughing at the jokes. Everyone's like, this is awkward.
So tough.
This is embarrassing. 2 days later, you don't even think about that guy. You don't remember necessarily even what he said. Maybe you remember, he wasn't that good, but you don't remember everything. That comedian's going to go to bed, lay awake at night thinking, I'm so stupid. Everyone thinks I'm an idiot. I'm so unlovable. I'm this, I'm that. I'm not funny. I'm not good enough to, and they have this like shame spiral. But I feel like a lot of acceptance is actually going back and like, people are generally more focused on themselves than they are with you.
Yeah.
And so not having such high stakes around the failure, it might be embarrassing. They might think you look stupid. You might be awkward, but they move on because everyone's focused on their own things and pursuing their own stuff. And I think the more that you're willing to embrace, I'm going to go up and laughing at it. Like, I went up and I didn't hit the mark. I didn't do. So what can I do better next time? Well, maybe I need to rehearse more. Maybe I need to stand in front of the mirror and deliver my joke in a way and try it in a different way, use different inflections with my voice so it's funnier. By them not laughing, they immediately showed me this was not funny. This group did not think this was funny. So what can I do differently to maybe make it a little more funny? Was it too long? Was the punchline not quick enough? Was it, and there's so much education floating around, but we get fixated on the, I'm not good, I'm not lovable, I'm not accepted, I'm stupid, they think I'm this, they think I'm that that it creates this protection wall.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, our instincts aren't allowing us to take risk anymore. So influencers all the time are like, go fail fast, fail often, fail upward, fail backwards. I hear Will Smith, he talks about it a lot.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't just go out blindly and take a risk and fail and think that's going to move you forward. Yeah. And so I have a theory where there's a difference between failing and losing.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So losing is when you show up to a risk unprepared, you swing and you miss. You don't learn from that.
Yeah.
Because you didn't prepare and go, I'm doing everything in my power to excel. And then when I miss the mark, I know, okay, well, this is what I could have done better, right? Like, you were not prepared. You swing blindly and missed. Failing is when you show up to a risk prepared, swing, and you still miss. And I feel like you can learn more from that. You can say, well, this is how I prepared. Maybe I can tweak this differently, do this differently, and this differently.
Well, you have so much better data, right?
You have much more information to go off of.
Because like, if I just go try something, but I don't put my full effort into it, I don't really give myself a chance to succeed. Like
100%.
I failed from the start.
Yeah.
But if I come fully prepared and I put my best effort in, especially knowing that this is part of the journey, then I have so much data to take from this experience because I know I tried my fullest, right? Yeah. And one of the things that a friend was talking about the other day was becoming the scientist and not the judge.
Mm.
And
That's a good analogy.
when you're looking at yourself, right? Like a judge is looking for fault and assigning fault and blame. Typically, I mean, that's in a court system, right? Like you're going to go there and it's going to say right or wrong. It's looking for fault. It's looking for accusations, building this big, huge case, and someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. But I love the scientist because the scientist is over here and he's going like, I put water and I put gasoline, and I put a combustible in there and it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. What do I need to tweak? It's not, a scientist isn't going, what's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
Where when you're in the court of law, you're being judged, right? You did this action, you're right or you're wrong. So many marriages, just for people, they're like an offshoot, like so many of our arguments are about that. It's the judge, right? Judge and jury. But when I'm able to look at myself or what I'm building through the scientist view, it's like such a better perspective because I'm just looking for the equation.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for fault. I'm not looking for value even. Like, how much do I value this person? It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It just simply is what I'm adding to this and what I'm taking away and what I'm, the amounts and how often and how long, how far, is it equaling my desired result?
Yeah.
And if not, what do I need to do?
100%.
Like when she started explaining that to me, it's been really helpful for me to like carry that framework around and start to apply it to different areas of my life.
Yeah.
I find that I get way less frustrated with myself when I actually start to go, okay, you're in a process. And if you can not assign guilt or blame, but you can look at this objectively, which means to remove your emotion from the actual moment. Like I'm just using objectivity and asking questions like, well, what would happen if I did this? What could I learn from this? Is there something I need to do different? Does somebody else know how to do this better? And start to look at it from there. I find it like it's so much easier for me to detach my own ego from what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's been like a big key for me.
Huge.
To help move forward.
Yeah. And I feel like you're describing like being a victim or being powerful. And sadly, I see a lot of victimhood when it comes to the church. Yeah. Because a lot of people get these, I feel like God's called me to be an actor. I'll hear that. Great. So what are you doing about it? Oh, I don't know. I'm just I'm going to go move to Hollywood and I'm going to, make connections and network and do it. Well, what about acting class? What about like actually, putting yourself in a position to act in something? And I see people, they talk about like, if you were, and it's so funny. One of my friends, Fab, we talk about this example all the time. Yeah. He's amazing. And he has an acting school. And an example we use is, if God called you to be a surgeon and you're like, okay, or you feel like God's called you to be a surgeon, a brain surgeon, and you just walk into hospitals and apply. Yeah. I want to be a brain surgeon. What experience do you have? What education do you have? What school did you go to? No, I just feel like this is what God's called me to do. Well, no, you're not educated. Well, I failed. All right, I tried, God. I gave it my best. No, you didn't. You didn't. Like, there's practical steps that we can take. Like, I feel like God gives you a vision and then he empowers you to go fail and also go through the journey of figuring it out. And I feel like he helps you with that. But I feel like we don't actually go on that journey of saying, okay, this is what I want to do. Now I get to go on the journey of getting there, and it's not always going to be pretty. It's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to look like favor all the time. It's a failing journey. Yeah.
What are some of the practical steps that you would say, like if you're trying something new, like building a business, what are the practical steps that I need to do in order to set myself up for success in the sense of like, okay, I've prepared the most that I can. I've in what I'm going towards. Like, do you have some thoughts on that?
Maybe rephrase the question. What do you mean?
Yeah. So we were just talking a second ago, like, let's say there's somebody who wants to become an actor, but they don't do the practical steps that it takes to become an actor, like going to acting school or whatever. They just go apply for jobs and try. Like, do you think that there's like a set of questions or a set of steps that you would say, if every human being should be asking themselves this question in order to help themselves prepare so that you don't just jump into something and fail? Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah. Let me see if I can. So maybe we could use it on an example basis.
Like I could give you a couple.
Okay, yeah.
And then maybe you can add to them.
Yeah.
Like one of my thoughts is, ask yourself this question before you start something. Have I seen someone do this before?
Gotcha. Okay.
That they've been really successful.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have access to them? What
Mm-hmm.
can I learn from what they're doing?
Yeah.
Like, I think you can apply that question in almost any arena. Like, if you're going to get married, right? Like, have I seen a successful marriage
Mm-hmm.
before? Do I have access to, like, do I know why it's successful? And do I have access to them in a way that I can learn what they do?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then maybe measure what am I good at? What am I not good at?
Yeah.
Like ahead of time before you get married, it's great to fail before you get married.
Yeah.
And it's great to learn before you have to experience a failure, because there's lots of ways to cut down.
Yeah.
And maybe that's my ultimate question is like, how do we cut down on that failure curve
Mm-hmm.
of like, because let's be honest, you can only fail so many times in a row
Mm-hmm.
without seeing success before you go like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And I think if we can shorten that curve a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and see more success, I think it's helpful. Do you have like,
Okay. Yeah. So
sorry, I didn't phrase it perfectly.
No, that's great. Yeah. I don't know if there is a way necessarily to shorten the curve of failure. I think there's a way to change our mindset so it doesn't feel like failure as much.
Yeah.
And so, I'll use my company for an example. I wanted to make a scratch-off adventure book. I didn't see anybody else who had a scratch-off adventure book. I scoured the internet. Nobody had it. So my goal was to make a scratch-off adventure book and sell it. And so sometimes we get highly fixated on step number 10 before we see what's right in front of us and what we can do now. So there wasn't a lot of failure necessarily in the beginning that was big. It was like, how do I even just make this?
Yeah.
I went to Hobby Lobby. I bought a notebook. I went on Amazon and bought scratch off material paper, cut it into little squares, wrote the adventure in pen and stuck it on there. And that wasn't failing. It was like, I mean, maybe it looked like crap. Maybe somebody looked at it and said, yeah, this one designer was like, this doesn't look good. Maybe try it this way. Maybe that was a failure, but it was just the learning curve of creating it. Great. I have a prototype. Now what do? Oh, I need to ask. I need to talk to somebody who has made a product before and see what the next step is. So I talked to my friend Kellen. Hey, Kellen, do you know what I need to do to make this? Yes. Contact this manufacturer, send them pictures and have them do this. And so it's literally seeing what's right in front of you and what can I do to get this step done, and then doing it the best you can. And it's kind of figuring it out. And there's micro failures within that, but you look at the main objective to sell this book. Well, I'm not in that phase right now. I need a product first. I need to figure out how to create it. And then I need to figure out a way down the road, how to market it, how to set up ad spend, how to do all these things. But sometimes I see a lot of people not take the steps they need because they get so hung up on future steps versus on fixating on what can I do right now. And spoiler alert, a lot of times it's just Googling. Literally, you jump on Google, you don't know an answer. You take steps to try to figure it out. And so, I mean, and like you said, finding mentors is incredible. I didn't really have any mentors who had done this before.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the people that I met with didn't offer advice that was fantastic. But I'll give you an example of maybe like a failure that led to making a lot of money. And I didn't know how to get capital to buy inventory to sell the books. And so
that's an important thing.
That's a very important thing. And so I reached out to a friend. He loaned me maybe $13,000. I bought the first round of inventory. We sold it in a week. Wow. And then I was like, I need $30,000 more to buy more inventory.
How did you sell those, by the way?
Off Instagram and Facebook ads.
Okay.
Yeah. So I created an ad. It's funny. I made an ad with my iPhone. I hired two friends, gave them a $25 Visa gift card, said, make an apple pie, but one of you's blindfolded and you're going to guide the person through it. And I filmed them on my iPhone. Went back home, locked myself in a closet, edited it on iMovie. That ad made us our first $1 million.
No way.
Yeah. No, I have a huge history of content creation, cinematography, videography, things like that. But I didn't have money. I didn't have a great camera. I didn't have a lot of, assets to use. I just did that. That made us our first $1 million. But basically I needed capital to buy more books to sell, and nobody would loan me money because it's a new company.
Yeah, it's risky.
My friend who loaned me the 13, we paid him back, and I was like, now can I borrow 30? He's like, no, that's good. And it was like, that was an obstacle, a roadblock. And it was like, well, I don't have the money. And so what we did at the time, now people are doing it, but it hadn't really been done. It was pre-orders for this product.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we posted online 4 to 8 weeks to delivery. And we didn't even have the products. So we sold 1,000 books before we even had them.
Yeah.
And then and that was the thing. If we had gotten fixated on the whole capital thing, it may have, discouraged us. We wouldn't have moved forward. We came to the obstacle and we're like, how do we solve this? And we figured it out. And that became a huge business model for us. We did pre-orders until we had generated enough capital to have a reserve to be able to buy inventory. And to do that, we probably made our first quarter $400,000, $250,000 to $400,000 before we had a stockpile of capital that we could be caught up on.
Wow.
And, I love that example because it was like that. To me, that was one of those areas where you hit an obstacle instead of being like, wow, we're failing. It's like, well, what can we learn from this? And how can we take it? How can we take advantage of this? How can we still make money? And so I talk to entrepreneurs who, they come up on these obstacles and it's like, this isn't working. And I'm like, well, what can you do with this situation that could work? And a lot of times they think of something that opens up maybe a whole new source of revenue that they weren't even expecting because they had to overcome that obstacle. I don't know if that's answering your question, but that's what first came to my mind with some of the stuff.
Yeah. I think being able to be creative, I don't know. It feels like, I know that this isn't the direct quote, but it's like adversity is the mother of creativity.
Yeah.
And I really think that that's true. Like you get into these places where you feel stuck, where you feel overwhelmed, where you hit this big obstacle and now you have to be creative or you have to walk away.
Yeah.
Right. Like those are your two options.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done here or I'm going to figure out how to solve this problem and walk it all the way to the end, which is super important. I do think, just to finish out, like the last thing we're talking about, I do think that some failure is unnecessary and self-induced. And
yes, I agree 100%.
Which is, I think, a little bit of what we're talking about. And so sometimes I see people fail and they feel, one, either it validates what we talked about already, that I'm not good, or the other one is they feel like, well, at least I'm trying. And so I think part of it for me is like, well, if you don't prepare well, then don't celebrate trying if you didn't prepare well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there should be something inside of you that says, I was built to do more than that. And I deserve to give myself a better chance than what I prepared for.
Yeah.
And I think that that's how my parents saw me at school a lot.
Yeah.
Like I felt dumb in school all growing up. I didn't feel like I could really succeed. And part of it was I went to a Christian school growing up where my parents sacrificed so much to pay for us to go to school and they didn't have the money. But it was like one teacher would teach 4 grades. And so like, I felt like I got behind and wasn't learning the concepts the same way that other kids were. And then pretty soon I just felt hopeless. Like I'm not going to get this stuff. And so I didn't try hard. And my dad, my parents' frustration all the time with me is you're not even trying. My dad would tell me like, if you tried and failed, I wouldn't care. But the fact that you're not even trying, and you're failing is what makes me mad.
Yeah. And so that's, the whole thing with losing versus failing.
Yeah.
Where it goes down to sometimes laziness.
Yeah.
And where it's like you didn't show up prepared.
Yeah.
And now you're blaming all of these things on why you're not successful. But the reality is, like you're saying, is you did not show up prepared.
Yeah.
And sometimes showing up prepared is just doing the best you can. The term excellence, is that the term I'm thinking of? I'm going to do everything with, in this environment. People say excellence a lot.
Yeah.
And excellence isn't a black and white linear standard.
Yeah.
Excellence does vary from person to person.
Sure.
Excellence is your very best. And excellence now is going to look different from excellence 5 years from now. Like would I have a standard and say, I need it to look like this because this is my standard and this is me showing up and doing the best I can, is going to look much different than how it was 5 years ago. And it's going to look much different than it is going to be 5 years from now. And so showing up prepared is showing up the best you know how to prepare And then you're going to realize maybe I could have prepared with this. Like, you show up to a spelling bee and you memorized these 100 words, and you show up and there's these 100 words. You showed up, you prepared the best you could. You just didn't memorize the right words. And it's like, you didn't know that. There was an educational gap. So maybe what do you do next time? Maybe you find out, are there certain words I should be memorizing or learning? Is there going to be certain words that they're going to have in the spelling bee that I could show up more prepared for? But sometimes you don't get the information. And it's like, well, then do something. Prepare the best you can, fail, and then learn from that and find out how you can prepare even better next time.
Yeah. It's so good, man. This is one of those subjects that I feel like, again, for me is I cringe knowing that I'm talking about something and agreeing about something that I'm going to have to go put into action.
Yeah.
Because as much as like, I don't know, just being honest. And I love to be like really honest with guys who are on the podcast and who follow, because I think there's a perception that maybe I don't face the same obstacles, or maybe people, who've been successful don't have the same fears or whatever. And it's just not true at all. Right. But I think the people that I look up to the most in life are the people that when they go home at night and they're living their life, they're implementing and putting into place the same thing that they teach about. That's a really hard thing to do, because it's, as somebody who's been in the teaching training for the last 20 years of my life, it's really easy to teach a concept that you don't want to go and do.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so much easier to teach it and not go and do it. But I really do feel like this is one of those subjects that if you can really embrace it, right? Like if you can go, I want to be a learner and I want to be a master at life. Okay, then you have to learn how to overcome obstacles.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to pick yourself up off the ground. I think it's why Theodore Roosevelt's The Man in the Arena. Have you ever read that?
Oh, I mean, it's hanging up in my house. The whole quote. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should read it. But the first time I heard The Man in the Arena and read it, I was just like enamored, because it feels like all of us, right? We can all see ourselves in the arena of life. And it basically says that the glory, and you could help me with this, but it basically says like the applause and the glory doesn't go to the person who is unwilling to get into the arena, but like the whether the guy succeeds or whether he fails, like he got in and he did his best, and he's covered in dirt and he's covered in grease and he's covered in, but he did his best, right?
He did, yeah.
And that's like, at the end of the day, I think about this a lot, not to take it a whole different direction.
No, I like it though. Yeah.
We get like 90 years on earth.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, and hopefully you die in your sleep, like painless, or get eaten by a shark because you like to surf.
I don't think that's painless. I feel like that's a lot of terror. And
maybe. Okay, maybe not by a shark, but hopefully you just go quick. You want to be able to look back at your life and say, God dang, man, I laid it all out there. And I'm not taking any of it to heaven.
Yeah.
Right. Except for like, maybe the ability to stand before God and him say, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
Like you took this thing that I gave you and you selflessly multiplied it to the best of your ability, right? Like that's what we're all living for. Totally. Is that moment that we stand before God. Yeah. And as a man, like, being able to embrace this message in a way that I embody it, knowing that I'm gonna experience this next week. Yeah. I'm in the middle of it right now. I've got areas in my life that are big, that are teetering on, well, there's on success and failure. There's some success and there's failure, but there's big obstacles in between and no real clear path through it. And how I view my circumstance feels more important than whether or not I succeed or fail.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like if we can really grasp this as men, it's the secret to being able to attain whatever challenge or whatever dream or whatever vision you have of yourself, because this really is the pathway.
Yeah.
There's no clear like do this to get to here, but these are the stepping stones to get to there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I also feel like to embody, like you're talking about, to embody failure, to make it part of who you are, to practice this, people need to take the pressure off. I need to go take a level 10 risk tomorrow.
Oh, that's good.
So like if you're going to start weight training, you're not going to go into the gym and throw 300 pounds on the bar and try to lift it. You're going to snap your arms, break your chest, and get hurt.
It's true.
And you're not going to go back to the gym for many, many months, if ever, because of that traumatic experience. I think people need to give themselves grace in the same way with failure, to say, what does a level 1 risk look like in my life? What does a level 2 risk look like? And you start to hardwire into your brain, if you take a level 1 risk, like someone who wants to be a public speaker, you're not going to try to go apply for a TED Talk speech. Granted, you get the opportunity, you go up and you miserably fail. That's going to create so much shame and trauma, and it's going to create this like fear of doing that again, because that was embarrassing. That was a lot of public humiliation, versus who are 5 of my close friends who I can actually stand up and give a speech to. And if I fail, it's my homies. They know who I am. It's kind of goofy and funny. That's a level 1. Maybe a level 2 is you're sharing a testimony at your church. Maybe level 3 is, whatever.
You just speak on a Friday night.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you work your way up, because I'm like, people hear the subject of failure and a lot of them avoid it because it seems too overwhelming. And especially if you're in a crazy season of life, if you have a new baby and your job is stressful and you're like, I can't go out and face public humiliation right now. I can't go out and look like an idiot or sound ignorant. Like I can't do that. It's like, no, this is a slow process. You have so much time. Don't let yourself believe that you have to be somewhere immediately. Like, and that's one of the things that I wrote in the book, where it's like, what does a level 1 failure look like? Write that out. What's the worst that can happen? Write that out. What's the best that can happen? Write that out. Now, what actually happened?
Yeah.
And you practice. And I think that the learning to embody failure is allowing it to be a journey of, I'm in a season of life where I can only take level 3 risks right now. And I want to be able to take level 4 risks. And sometimes life offers you, hey, do you want to take a level 7 right now?
Yeah.
I'm not ready for that. There's no shame in that.
Yeah.
But some people, I am ready for that. And you take that and you're like, I'm a level 7 now. Level 7s feel like a piece of cake. When I first started guest speaking on podcasts, I would like almost throw up before each time.
Totally.
Right. And I was terrified of speaking on podcasts. Like this podcast right now, I would have probably thrown up before coming on it. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it was like, well, I'd get on a friend's podcast who have maybe like 10 downloads. Maybe I do my own podcast where almost nobody's listening back then. And maybe what I'm saying? And you start to practice that to where then, I feel like maybe I was level 4 or 5. And then my friends Justin and Abby were like, you want to be on my podcast? And they have, maybe 100,000 downloads or something per episode. And you're like, oh my God, this is terrifying. And you get there and your face is numb and you feel like your mouth is dry and then you do it and you're like, oh, that was all right. Like I could do that.
Yeah.
And maybe that was a level 7 to me. And so all the other risks, at 6, 7, or 8, it feels like it's in my caliber.
Yeah.
So maybe, a couple years down the road, Joe Rogan's like, you want to be on my podcast? That's a level 10 to me because that's the most popular podcast in the world.
It would be a level 10 to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, but if I have never done a podcast and I was expecting that's what a risk looked like, is trying to get on the best podcast in the world or, something like that, like I would spiral before I even took the risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like people can give themselves a lot more grace and understanding of, hey, embracing failure doesn't look like going out and traumatizing yourself by trying to do the biggest thing you can think of. Or, like people who have a lot of shame or not shame, fear of asking someone on a date.
Yeah.
Yeah. That comes up so much when I'm coaching somebody, is like, dude, I'm so scared of asking someone on a date. And it's like, all right, well, it is scary to walk up to a girl that you think is really cute and say like, hey, I think you're cute. You want to go out to coffee? That's terrifying. If you've never done it before, it's terrifying. And it's like, well, what's a low stake way that you can start to ease yourself into that? Why don't you compliment something you like about the cute girl at the coffee shop? You go be like, yeah, I really like those sneakers. Like, I like the color. It kind of pops, blah,
start
blah, blah.
the conversation.
Start the conversation, yeah. And then don't even have the asker out in your head. And then how did that feel? And work yourself up. And a lot of times if I'm encouraging someone to step out and ask somebody out, the first time I'll actually have them ask them out on Instagram where they can actually send an audio message to where they can delete it if it doesn't sound good. And I've done this with like 10 different guys and actually a few different ladies who wanted to ask a guy out. Hey, sorry, this might sound a little weird and you don't know me very well, but I just think you look really cute and would love to take you out to coffee. Promise I'm not a serial killer. Or something goofy. And sure, sounds like fun. And that, I mean, because doing it in person can sound so scary. Maybe you go on the coffee date, maybe 2, maybe nothing comes from that. Maybe now you're ready to ask somebody out in person.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it takes away this pressure of like, tomorrow you need to go ask out somebody immediately because this is taking a risk and you need to embrace failure. Maybe taking a risk just looks like complimenting her shirt, her shoes, her hair. Yeah. What have you.
It's along the same lines of building habits. And last year I read Tiny Habits and Atomic Habits and several
times. Best books.
Yeah, which just amazing resources. But I think most people, when they start to try to create new habits, try to go level 5 or level 8, because it's like, I don't want to just do one push-up. I want to get in shape. So I'm going to go to the gym and hammer the gym. And we all know what's going to happen, right? Like you're not going to go back. Statistically speaking, 90% of people who have gym memberships don't use them.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was that high.
Yeah, it's really high. Yeah. That's why, I mean, honestly, it's why Planet Fitness is such a great model. Other models like that is they can sell more than they could actually house, right? So it's like if all their users used every day, they wouldn't have enough space for it.
Totally, yeah.
So it's kind of a cool model. And
the treadmills print out pizza, so it keeps them going back to the gym. So.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
They figured out what brings people back and what keeps them here.
Yep.
The donuts.
Yeah.
Shame-free donuts. Yeah, actually, Planet Fitness. I read a whole thing on it and how genius the model is.
But, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is, and horrible all at the same.
And if you're too big and you make noise, we're going to shame you.
Yeah. Well, they figured out what kind of, honestly, what it said is the guys who are really big, who make a lot of noise, they're the ones that come to the gym frequently. And so it drives away their frequent customer, right?
Yeah.
If I say like, you can't come here and make a ton of noise and you have an environment where there's pizza for free and you have an environment like, you take out, you remove out all the frequent users, a lot of the frequent users. So anyways.
No, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a pretty genius model.
Yeah.
Wish I'd have thought of it.
Yeah.
But going back, like we know that if you do one push-up a day after every time you go pee, like eventually that will seem easy. It's a low barrier to entry. And as opposed to like, if you say, I'm going to do 50 push-ups every day. Well, you'll do it one day, but you won't do it the next. It's too much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you'll eventually do 50 push-ups a day if you do one push-up for 10 days and are kind to yourself and give yourself, gratitude for doing that one and don't look down on yourself. And eventually you build these incredible habits. Well, I think a lot of what you're talking about is building confidence. And like, for instance, asking a girl out, most guys, the fear is, I haven't done it before and I don't feel confident and competent to do that. And so confidence comes through competency, right? It comes through doing stuff. And so if I learn how to compliment and I become really good at complimenting, then I feel confident at complimenting. And maybe I can take that same confidence and put it towards asking someone because I'm already good at this. Of course, like I can talk to a woman and just getting confident at talking to a woman helps me to overcome that obstacle.
Yeah.
And applying that same principle, right? Like you're saying, what's a low barrier to entry for an obstacle or a challenge or a failure is, well, I'm going to learn investing. So I'm going to invest $100. Not going to invest $10,000. And I had a really close person in my life, said his friend does day trading and is a millionaire from doing day trading. And he came over to my friend's house and he was all excited, about like, he's really passionate about day trading. And so he was talking to my friend. I was like, dude, you got to try it. And I'll help you. And so he's like, I invested $5,000 right then and I lost it. And he looked back at me and said, I'm never doing that crap again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And it's like, the truth is like, you probably would be really good at it, but he tried at such a high level for him, right? Like $5,000.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, dude, that's hard. That's painful.
Yeah.
And in his excitement, he went, I'm going to be a day trader. I'm going to turn this 5,000 into 50,000 like my friend does. And really what you do is you learn a really valuable lesson that is like, dude, don't trade what you're not willing to lose. But also the other lesson that you learn is like, man, risk is really painful. Are you sure you want to do that? If he would have tried at maybe $200, because he's got money, it wouldn't have even been painful.
Yeah.
He actually could have taken that $5,000 and went, I'm going to trade this over a 3-month period. Whether I win or lose doesn't matter as long as I learn, right?
Yeah.
So it'd been a much better approach to like, I'm going to invest this $5,000 into learning.
Yes.
And my whole goal is to learn.
Yeah.
Is to just reinvest this $5,000, try new strategies. But I do think that one large barrier for people is we want to do this thing good now. Yep. And I want to be, I want whatever. I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to be it now. I want to be a content creator and I want to be it now. And if I can't do it right now, and I know we touched on this a little bit, but I think just kind of in closing, like, I think a lot of times we shoot ourselves in the foot because we don't give ourselves enough time to actually achieve the success that we're going after. And therefore we end up feeling like a failure when, man, if you'd have just stuck at it a little bit longer, if you would have changed the way that you saw it and give yourself more runway, like your breakthrough was right on the other side of, I saw this picture. My dad had it and I can't remember what the tagline was, but it was this miner. And it was a cartoon. And so this miner had dug like a mile into a hillside and then turned and gave up. And like, you could see the gold behind it, you know? And the whole thing was about like, hey man, breakthrough's just on the other side, but you have to be willing to keep going. Yeah. And I do think that a lot of that is our unrealistic timeline. Totally. Of where we should be and how quickly we should be there. Yeah. I heard Alex Hermosi, I think is his name, say so many people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Yeah. And I think that that's a brilliant quote because if you give yourself enough runway, you can probably achieve what you are set out to achieve. Yeah. But if you think it's going to happen tomorrow, like you're just going to get frustrated with it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's tricky because I know the picture you're talking about and you're like, but he didn't know. And how long did he spend digging before he actually quit? Yeah. And with business, it's tricky because, Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank, he's like, you give it 3 years, 4 years, and if it's not profitable, you shoot it in the head, take it behind the barn and shoot it in the head. And that's why it's like, sometimes you have to know when to quit. And a lot of people, because I'm playing off what you say, and I'm trying to also talk about the nuance of it because there's this idea of never give up. Well, if you did that in poker, you'd lose a lot of money, right? Sometimes you need to give up. Sometimes failure is showing you what's the way by showing you what's not the way. Yeah. Sometimes failure is showing you, oh, well, you're actually not going to be successful if you keep persisting. I know people who are like, I'm going to be a content creator. I'm going to make 100 videos. They make 100 videos and nothing works. And it's like, well, I tried and failed. Maybe you try something different. Maybe you figure out why. Maybe your hooks aren't working. Maybe the way you talk isn't engaging. Maybe the way the lighting setup isn't working. Maybe add subtitles. There's so many things you can learn from that. And so people try to adapt too quickly. They release one video, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? There's a scientific reason. Release 100 videos, before you get discouraged. But then take what you see and say, what am I not doing that I could do? And then, with business, maybe the market's not ready for your product. Maybe you're not marketing it right. I have a friend who he had this business and he would talk to me about it and he was trying to get me to invest, but some didn't feel right because I didn't fully understand the business model, how it made money. And he would explain it to me. And I'm just like, And he was always on the verge of breakthrough. He was always so close to hitting that big ticket thing. And he was 5 years into it. And I had a conversation with him finally. And I was like, bro, I think if I'm not understanding your business model fully and understanding how it's going to make me a ton of money, I'm fairly smart. I'd say I'm a 6.57 on the scale of smartness with street smarts with entrepreneurship. There's a whole bunch of people who aren't going to understand this. And I'm like, maybe it's not that great of a business model. Maybe you need to actually start over from scratch and retry. And ultimately he went bankrupt. And it was like, but he could have stopped it, 2 or 3 years when he was realizing the market wasn't accepting what he was doing. And so I feel like there is the level of you need to be persistent. And what I hear you saying is a lot of people aren't trying enough to get enough evidence that it's not working. So it's like they're not actually giving themselves enough time to reap the data and to look at it scientifically and say, this method's not working. They have this expectation for overnight success, which is another cliche. Overnight success doesn't work. But in a world of social media where kids are seeing people go viral overnight and then get all this fame, they think, no, success could be overnight if I made the right video. But what they don't understand is a lot of these content creators who are becoming famous overnight had developed a skill set that when given the right platform, then they exploded overnight. So maybe it was public speaking, maybe it was design, maybe it was the way they talked about their, wine collection. There was something that led them to eventually blow up overnight. There is no such thing as overnight success. If there is, it's 0.001%, and it's like getting hit with the lottery.
So small.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's really true and such a good point. The tendency is, I think for most people, the tendency is, in myself, is I just want to be through this tough thing and I want to feel successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to figure that out right now. Like yesterday, I have to figure that out. But I think it's so true, like what you said about staying too long, because it is hard to know when to walk away. And I think I'm helping a business right now in an area where I've been there for 3 years. It's not BraveCo. It's a different business. And like I've helped in an area of marketing and advertising and growing the business. And recently I've found myself going, listen, I have put all of my knowledge, effort, energy, resources in. I don't actually know how to take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to admit that has been so awesome.
Wow.
Because, and even like, I don't know who else to pull in the sense of like, I've pulled on friends' resources and stuff like that, but it's been great because I've been able to say to, my overseers, like, hey, in order to grow this organization to the next level, we have to bring somebody else's expertise in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not a marketing, advertising genius. I'm a pastor and a counselor. And like, I've done my best. I've pulled on. And so for me, like, I think that when we talk about how to know when to walk away, like those are some of the things. It's like, when you can be brutally honest with yourself and say, I've pulled in the outside experts that I have connection with. I have put my best effort in. I don't actually have more bandwidth. So that to me is the other thing, is like, I don't have more bandwidth to keep just endlessly investing.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to walk away. Like it's time 100%. To like find a different solution and rework the problem. But man, this has been awesome. What's next for you? Is it Adventure Challenge 2.0?
Yeah. I mean,
you got more creative things.
I took a break from being hands-on in my company for about 1.5 to 2 years. I still met with the executive team and made sure it was on track, but I'm getting a lot more involved because I have a lot of different ideas that I want to bring into the company. I'm really excited. We've already started some of the projects and I'm super stoked. I keep saying I'm relaunching my podcast. I'm going to get that back up and going again. I'm
going to hold you to that.
Yeah, I release an episode like once every other month, but I'm like next month I'm going to start releasing weekly. All right.
I'm going to call you on that.
Yeah. Like when's the episode?
Yeah, dude.
And then yeah, my book, I just finished that. That was a huge one.
It's a big accomplishment, man.
And I'm kind of like trying to not put too much on my plate right now and go in 100 different directions. Yeah. And so right now, actually figuring out best ways to market a book has been a fun journey.
Yeah.
Because it's, I have a lot of friends who release books and it sells 100 copies and it doesn't go anywhere. And, for me, it's like, I'm not famous, so I can't just say, here's my book about this thing and everyone's going to buy it. It's like, no, I need to figure out a way to market this so it actually has a good chance of succeeding. And so, that's kind of what I've been doing. That, pickleball and surfing, those are my things.
That's a good life, man.
Yeah.
Well, you have a great book and you have such a great story in your life, just what you've walked through, and then your ability to try, fail, reassess, and go to the next level is just awesome, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate
So
that.
yeah, I really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank
Where
you.
can people find the book? When's it going to be released? Where can they find the book? And
So
how can they
it
get
comes out
connected to you?
January 2nd. We release on Audible, Kindle, and paperback, all on Amazon.
Okay, cool.
And so, yeah, go on Amazon. Hello, my name is Failure. And or if on my Instagram account, there's even a link they can click on. But January 2nd.
Okay, cool. And your Instagram is Bryant Ellis?
Mhm.
Awesome. Dude, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jason.
I appreciate it. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed this week's podcast. I think it'd be really cool if you looked at your life. Just take a few minutes to look at your life and go, is there an obstacle that I've been avoiding that I actually need to change my perspective, right? Like, or is there an area in my life where I've been the judge and therefore it's been really hard because I'm judging myself instead of being the scientist and going like, man, what do I need to tweak? What do I need to change? And maybe give yourself some encouragement instead of shame. And so guys, hopefully this podcast helped you. If you're enjoying what we're doing, I don't hardly ever say this, but man, if you guys would subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment, that actually really helps us. And then send it to a friend. So those things all help, but love you guys. I'll see you next week.